Welcome to Carly Tackles Kitchen Cabinets, Part 8, making your carcass for your wall cabinets. We start off the same way when we made the base cabinets. If you haven't checked out that video, check out Part 1 in the Kitchen Cabinet series. Using a table saw, I cut 3/4 inch plywood down to size. The depth of a wall cabinet is typically 12 inches, counting the face frame. So these I cut 11¼ inches thick to account for my 3/4 inch face frame. Just like we did with the base cabinets, our remaining plywood we cut into 4-inch strips. The difference is our saw blade is not set to 0 degrees. Instead, we set the saw blade to a 45-degree angle to create a French cleat. Using a French cleat makes the install process a lot easier on wall cabinets that are above your head. One of your 4-inch strips is going to be cut down into small pieces that you will mount to your wall on the stud, while the other 4-inch strip will be cut to fit your carcass and will fit on the cleat that you put on the wall. Back to making the carcass. On my plywood, I measure out the total height I want my wall cabinet to be. This is not counting the face frame overhang, this is just the base of the cabinet. For my wall cabinets, I use the existing cabinets as a guide, and I'm cutting these to 34½ inches. I'm using my Bora edge clamp, my 24-inch version, to help me cut the straight lines with my circular saw. I'm going to repeat this process to cut out my other side. Now, one thing to note that's different about wall cabinets versus your base cabinets is wall cabinets need a top and a bottom, whereas our base cabinets only needed a bottom because a countertop sits on the top. So don't forget to cut out a top and a bottom. Now that we have all the pieces cut out, now it's time to cut a groove for our back panel that is 1/4 inch thick. Since my plywood is not perfectly 3/4 inch, I'm going to use my material to set the fence on my table saw. My height of my saw blade needs to be 1/4 inch. I'm using my gauge setup blocks to set the saw blade to the correct height. Instead of using a 1/4 inch dado set, I'm using my regular saw blade. I'm going to make multiple passes adjusting my fence as I go. When determining which side to cut the groove into, take a look at your sheet of plywood. Which side is the best? That's the side you want to cut your groove into, because that's the side that's going to be inside of your cabinet. When you open up your cabinet doors, that's the material you're going to see. Once you cut your first pass through all of your materials, it's time to adjust the fence. Go slow and make a cut, and then test with a scrap piece. You'll see me adjust my fence a few times, just moving it slightly, because I don't want to overcut it where my panel's too loose. I want that nice fit. Once you find that perfect measurement, now you're ready to cut all of your other pieces at that setting. Make sure you line up your current groove to the saw blade so you don't accidentally cut multiple grooves in your cabinet. Now it's time for the fun part. Drilling out the holes in your sides so you can adjust your shelves. I highly recommend this rockler jig and this drill bit that goes with it, and you won't have to worry if your holes are lined up properly. I am not going to drill out every hole in this guide because I know I don't want a shelf at the very bottom of my cabinet. So I'm going to start at the 5 just to get me going and drill from there. Now, because I didn't start at the 8, I need to remember that I started at 5 when I drill out the holes on my other side piece, And if I'm doing multiple cabinets, I want them all to be the same. So I need to remember which number I started at. The other thing to pay attention to is where that back panel groove is located on your side piece. If you are starting at 5, which is your bottom of your cabinet, but you're going to go all the way up, when it comes time to put this guide on your other side, you need to kind of line them up. Maybe put your back panels to back panels so you know which side you want to be the bottom. You would hate to not drill the holes and when you go to put your cabinet together realize, whoops, that's the top. And now I have holes all the way to the bottom and then the other one's the opposite. So try to pay attention to that, or if you don't want to deal with it, drill holes all the way through it and then it doesn't matter. Now do the same thing on your other piece that is meant for your sides. Next, I'm going to prepare my carcass for its face frame while all the pieces are separated. I'm going to pre-drill pocket holes in both of my side pieces and the top and bottom. You need to pay attention to which direction your carcass will face. You are only needing to drill pocket holes in the carcass that would face the front for your face frame. A great way to keep track of that is look at where you put your back panel groove. That's clearly going to be in the back of the cabinet, so you're going to put the holes on the other side. And since I'm going to use side panels, or I'm going to butt up cabinet to cabinet, you're not going to see the pocket holes that I'm drilling if I'm drilling from the outside. I'm also planning on my face frame overhanging the top and the bottom, so you won't see the pocket holes that I'm drilling in those either. You will notice that I have my dado set and my sacrifice fence installed on my table saw. We are going to cut a 3/4 inch dado into the top and bottom of the side pieces. This is to help us assemble the top and bottom piece of our carcass. Because I'm using a crosscut sled, I needed to make sure that I raise my blade high enough to cut out the right thickness. It should be a 1/2 inch higher than my crosscut sled so that I can leave a 1/4 inch material. I'm also using a scrap piece of plywood to set the thickness of that dado. I wanted that plywood to fit perfectly flush with that side piece. Once you are confident that you have it set correctly, flip over your side piece and cut from the other side. One thing I forgot to mention in the beginning is you want to make sure you're cutting the dado into the good side, the side that faces inward. So the same side that you cut the groove and the peg holes into. Let's glue this thing. Grab one of your side pieces and place a little glue only on one side. I'm using my 90-degree clamps to help hold my side piece to the bottom. If you're into making cabinets, I highly recommend purchasing these clamps. I also use them in a variety of other projects, not just for cabinets. When you're lining up your side piece to the bottom, make sure your grooves are lined up so your back panel slides nice and easy. Also, make sure the front of your side is flush with the front of that bottom piece. If they are mismatched, it's going to cause problems when you install your face frames. You want that whole side to be perfectly flush. I am also using some parallel clamps to help hold the base. While we wait for that to dry, we can cut out our back panel. Using my table saw, I'm cutting my 1/4 inch maple plywood. I'm using the nicer maple plywood instead of just regular 1/4 inch plywood in the wall cabinets because when you open the doors you're going to see the back. In the base cabinets I made, I just did drawers. You're never going to see that back panel, so why waste your money on paneling? To finish cutting the panel to size, I'm going to use my Bora 50-inch edge clamp to help guide my circular saw in a straight line. I'm also going to use blue paint tape. This can help prevent your plywood from splintering when you're using a circular saw. After the cut, I grab my hand block sander and smooth out the edges. Now we've come full circle. Grabbing that 4-inch French cleat board that you cut earlier, using your miter saw, you're going to cut it to the same internal dimensions of your carcass. Now we're going to drill pocket holes at each end. Pay attention to front and back of this board. You want the tallest portion, so the peak of your 45, facing outwards towards you. That's the same side you're going to drill the pocket holes. You want the shallow side not to have pocket holes. You can install this before or after you install the back panel piece. Up to you. When you're placing the board in your carcass, double check your peg holes you drilled. At one side, we didn't go all the way to the top. That's the bottom, so you don't want to install it on the bottom. I had glued this upside down, so this is the top of my carcass. I double checked the peg holes before installing. You also want your French cleat facing up, not towards the bottom of your carcass. Otherwise, how are you going to use it? Slide the back panel into place. You may have to wiggle it to help it find that groove in the bottom. If you happen to start this process on top of a workbench and are too short to reach the top and see what you're doing, you can grab a ladder like I did and start applying glue to the sides. When placing the top piece on, start with the back panel, getting it into that groove, and then wiggle that top piece in to be flush with the front. Again, you don't want it sticking out in the front, otherwise your face frames are going to be messed up. But I found that starting with that back panel and then adjusting it was a lot easier. Apply some clamps to hold your piece in place and then wait for it to dry. That is the last step of your carcass. Thanks for watching Carly Tackles Kitchen Cabinets Part 8, your wall cabinet carcass. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you'd like to see more videos similar to this one and in the kitchen cabinet series, please subscribe to my channel, Carly Tackles DIY, Tools and Gadgets, Tips and Tricks. Make sure you hit that bell to receive notifications when I release new content.